Let's talk about CSS. Animations and transitions. Does anyone know the difference between these two key aspects of modern CSS? It's a good approach. I like it. So with transitions, we, as Farid said, we specify a starting point, an end point, and then the browser will interpolate what's happening in between, right? So if I want an element to be displayed on the left, and after 1 second the elements will be on the right, the browser will interpolate the position in between, right? An animation is a more complex mechanism where we can have full control on not only the beginning and the end, but also what happened in between. Yeah, after half a second, after quarter of a second. So that's the first difference. The second difference is that transitions need a change on the CSS class names. In other words, to trigger a transition, as we'll see in a minute, we need to change a class or an attribute. We need to change something. Once we change something, then the transition happens. With an animation, we don't need to change anything. We can trigger an animation as soon as we refresh the page. So let me play with some examples. So transitions are easier to understand, but they require a bit of setup. So on my left-hand side, I got a basic app. And then essentially I want to display a box first of all. So let's display the box, the class name box, and then as part of the box, hello CSS. So now let's add some colors to the box. I go to my CSS, box, background color blue, with 100 pixels, font size 30 pixels, and padding 20 pixels. And color white. 100, let me change a few things. Font size 20, yeah, something like that. Yeah, blue box. So, I want to add a button, so whenever I click on the button, I want to change the size of my box. Yeah, I want to expand it. So, how do we change a class name using a button? I want to add a button, so whenever I click on the button, in other words, I want to go to my CSS and do that. Box.isExpanded with 200 pixels. That's my goal, yeah? So whenever the box has the class name isExpanded, I want to expand it. But now the point is, how do we add that class name dynamically? So I want to have a button to add the class. By default, the class is not there. When I click on the button, the element gets the class and then expands. Button on click. I like that, Patrick. So, button on click what? Function, right? And then what? Create a function. All right, let's create a function. Function toggle. So whenever, if we click, we expand. If we click again, we collapse, right? So toggle box size. So how do we invoke toggle box size here? This dot, yeah, let's call it first. Yeah, so when we click on the button, we call that function. All right, and then here what? This dot set state what? Yeah. We need to initialize the state probably, right? This dot state, let's create a variable is expanded, false by default, for instance. So when we click on it, it's expanded what? It could be true, but the problem is if we want to toggle, once it becomes true, it never negate. Negate what? Correct. This dot state dot is expanded. Let me move it to a new line. I like that. That's correct. So that means A, the new value is, if it was true, set it to false. If it was false, set it to true. On, off, on, off. It's like switch, right? It's like a switch. Cool, fantastic. So now we got that, this is not even part of the workshop, right? So this is the preparation. So it's expanded. And then what? I want my box to have a class name is expanded if that property is set to true. No, keyframes is for animations. We'll talk about animations later on. I'm just talking about transitions. Backticks, all right? Backticks inside curly braces, yeah, I like that. So we use curly braces because we want to create a dynamic string in JavaScript.
And inside backticks we put space, dollar sign, curly brace. And there we put this dot state dot is expanded question mark, space question mark. And then we'll put quotes.
The name of the class, right? And if not, something like that. Yeah, let me move that a bit. It's a bit complicated with the size of the screen. Actually, let me maximize both windows. May help on readability, I hope. Right? This line is very important. I hope everybody understands what I'm doing here. So my class name is going to be box, and then, because we can use template literals, please check, is the box expanded? If so, add the is expanded class name. If not, that's it, right? There's nothing else to add. So if we go now to the browser, and we maximize it as well, so if we click on the button, let me select it. You see my box? Not probably, not yet. You see the box, right? If I click on the button, hopefully, look, you see? It works. That works exactly as expected. That's classic CSS. We have two states, and then when we click on the button, expand, collapse, expand, collapse, expand, collapse, right? Now let's talk about transitions. You can see that when I click, it immediately changed from 100 pixels to 200 pixels. But can we make it smoother, like, yeah, you see, like a fluid animation? Yes, of course we can. Look at how simple. So we've done all the complex things. Now everything else is much easier. In the box, we type transition, colon. Then we need to specify 3 properties. First of all, in which key do we want to apply the transition? Which rule? With, correct. The second argument is the type of transition. Could be linear, could have a fancy, we'll see in a minute, the details. Let's start with a simple thing, linear. So it will start and end at the same speed. And then the duration of the animation, for instance, 1 second. Look at how simple this is. We say, A, whenever the width changes in that element, please animate it. Instead of moving from 100 to 200, go 101, 102, 103, 104, you get the point, right? Keep going during 1 second. So if we try again, you see? It animates the box. Does it make sense? Any questions? No? So, what else apart from linear? What other options do we have? Is in. I like it. Or to keep it even simpler, is. So what is means? Is tries to set up a more natural animation where it first accelerates the animation and then it decelerates it. Imagine that you are driving a car. First of all, you accelerate, then you go to full speed, and then you brake, right? It's a more natural, from a human point of view, way to animate things. Let me show you. Look. It's a bit hard to see, but maybe you can get the feeling that the speed is not linear. We can go really crazy with the type of shape or of speed that we can perform. I'll show you something. If you select the box on DevTools, you can see that here you can play around. This is very sexy actually, because look, you see? Here it's telling you the different styles, which is pretty cool, right? There are obviously many different styles. And you can even have some sort of bouncing. Look, you can do things like that, which is pretty cool, right? Yeah, pop, you see, it bounces. So if we try again, you see that as soon as you close the panel, it's giving you the result, which is a complex expression, but we don't care, right? I mean, if this does the trick, look what happened now when I click. You see? I think it's pretty cool, right? What happened if our animation is 0.2 seconds, very fast, right? It works, of course, but what happens if we want to debug it? If we want to have a complex transition and we got the feeling it's not working as expected, it's hard to see, right? Is that linear? Is that ease? I don't know, visually speaking, it's very fast. Is there a way to slow down the animations? Say again? Obviously, we can go to the code and change it. But do we need to do that every time we want to slow down the animations? No. Thankfully, in modern Chrome, you can see an animation tab here. If you click on it, look, you can slow down. That's pretty cool, right? 10%. Look, how long the animation will take to run now, Nilofer? Yeah, if the at full speed takes 0.2 seconds, and we are slowing down, so it runs at 10% of speed, how long will it take to complete? Patrick? Why 2 seconds?
I mean, I was trying to work it backwards, but I just think it will be 2 seconds. I can't really explain it. It's all how it is in my head.
Well, if the speed is 0.2, yeah,
I think it will be 0.02.
0.02. So that means it will run ultra fast, right? So Patrick is right, but he doesn't get any points because he's been unable to explain the reasons. And the reasons are, if it takes 0.2 at 100% speed, if it's 10%, it will take 10 times more, right? So 0.2 multiplied by 10, which is 2. This is not even part of the workshop, just to do some basic maths, right? So if we run again, 1, 2, more or less, right? 1, 2, it's clearly 2 seconds and not 0.02, right? Hope you agree on that. Do you have any questions? No? All right, so we can apply transitions on multiple properties if we want. Actually, we can even do that. All. What all means, guys? Correct. All means, A, please listen for any single change on that box, and as soon as anything changes, please try to apply a transition. Yeah? So if we do that, still works. What do you think about all? Is it a good or a bad thing?
I think it would be bad.
Why?
Too many things were set off.
Yeah, I agree with Patrick. So all has some performance concerns because the browser needs to analyze every single property on that box, and there are many properties that affect a box, right? So that's not, generally speaking, a good thing. Also from a readability point of view, if I see all, my feeling is that developer is a bit lazy, right? So please be explicit with. Much better, right?
Is it default? You don't have to type anything.
Is it default? What do you mean is default? If you don't type all, that's a good question. I don't know. Like that? That's, yeah, maybe, yeah. I've never done that, but let's figure out, right? Yeah, you're right. So if you don't put anything, it as default sets all. Yeah, cool. That's a good thing. Cool. That's pretty much the way transitions work. Again, transitions are very useful when you want to move from one state with 100 pixels to a different one with 200 pixels. Can we apply transitions on every single CSS property? For instance, can we change, instead of the width, can we change the background color from blue to red? Does that make sense? What do you think? No? So Nilofer disagrees. Let's have a look. We can. It works. We can interpolate colors, which is a sexy thing, right?
Does the transition then apply to color change?
Yeah, of course. You can see that, right? Look.
So what about the extended?
No, I removed that. So I removed the width, right? This was just a test to prove that we can change the background color. Can we apply a transition on the opacity, for instance? That makes sense, right? Opacity, let's show an element. But default is transparent, as you can see. And now, what is it? Oh, sorry. Opacity 0, opacity 1. Let me try again. Oh, the color, yeah. Oh, of course, sorry, I removed the background color, right? So background color blue, for instance. Otherwise, the box is there, but it's invisible. So, look, now it's there, but it's invisible when I click, you see? Which is pretty cool as well. Yeah. Can I use display? Can I apply display none and then display block? It should work. I don't think that will work because display only has two states. It's like being pregnant. Either you're pregnant or you're not pregnant. You cannot be in between, right? So display cannot be interpolated. So if we try again, I mean, it just display is 1 or 0, but there's nothing in between. In other words, we can apply transitions whenever the property can be interpolated. From 0 to 1, you can do 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, even with colors, because colors, at the end of the day, are just numbers. That's why we can interpolate colors as well. Anything else? No? So let me quickly show you animations. As I mentioned before, animations are working a different way. They are simpler to set up, because we don't need to click to change the state. Look, I'm going to remove all the handlers and everything. I'll simply leave my box. You see? So now the UI is super simple. Something like that. And how do we set up animations? That's a bit different. Let's try to go back to the original example, where the original width was 100 pixels, and then it changed to 200. Again, we are not going to change any CSS property, but we need to use keyframes, as someone suggested before. First of all, we need to specify the name of the animation. And how do we do that? With a property called animation name. So animation name, I'll call it expand. And what do we do with that? Afterwards, we need to type keyframes and the name of the animation. And in here, we specify our rules. For instance, from with 100 pixels to with 200 pixels. I think that's quite readable, right? You specify how the element looks like at the beginning and how the element looks like at the end. What else do we need to specify? How long will this animation take to complete? Will it take 1 second, 2 seconds, half a second? Why 1? No, we need to specify it. So we need to the property animation duration. Correct, because the default will be 0, will be instant, right? But now you can say, no, please, run the animation for 1 second. And do we need anything else? Animation type, but that's not necessary. So it will be linear by default. So I'm trying to create the simplest animation possible, right? And we need at least these two things: the name of the animation with the keyframes and did duration. Let's see what happened. Something fun will happen, probably. I think I didn't change the opacity. Oh, display none. Sorry, that was wrong, right? So, look. Well, still, why it takes 10 seconds, guys, to complete? Correct, we're slowing down. So let's play at full throttle, right? Look at what happened. Can anyone tell me what's going on? It's something is going on, definitely. You can see some things moving around.
We need to set up like a limit.
A limit.
Tell it when exactly to stop.
Yeah, that's a good point. Anais is right. So by default, and I believe this is a bit controversial, when you run an animation, when the animation is over, it goes back to the original state. That's why, look, it works, expands, blah, 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 but then it reverts. In some cases, that may be okay. But in my life, 90% of the time, when I run an animation, I want to leave the element at the end, right? I don't want to revert it to the original position. To fix that, we need a third property called animation fill mode. That's very important. And here, you tell the animation when to stop. And generally speaking, we want to run the animation forwards. Which means run the animation once, and that's it. Yeah, and leave it. Leave it here. So if we run it again, you see? Now it makes sense, right? It's much better. It doesn't go back to the original state. Animation fill mode. And now, probably you notice that we have one of these lines is duplicated. Look at line number 4 against line number 13. Do we need to set the width twice? The original width? No. Which one do we remove? Do we remove the line number 4 or do we remove line number 13? And why? Line number 4. All right, let's remove line number 4. I mean, I think that approach is very sensible, right? Because for me, it's much easier to understand the code if it's like that, because both widths, they're side by side, so I can compare them. If it's on line number 4, it's a bit more complicated. And I'll tell you something, it will work. You see? But now, our business analyst says, wait a minute, even though the animation is okay, let's run it for 2 seconds, by the way. I don't want the animation to run immediately when you refresh. I want to delay it. I want to have some delay. How can we delay an animation? Does anyone know?
Animation delay.
Correct. Richard not only can score 99.6 on expert JavaScript, he can also notice that animation delay specifies how long we need to wait until we trigger the animation. And look at what happened now. It's going to be interesting. Can you see the problem? So that list of keyframes only applies when we trigger the animation. That's why this is dangerous. I know that it looks more readable, and I agree on that, and I love it. But yeah, because of that, you have 2 options. Either you duplicate it, look at what happened. This is perfect, yeah? Now it's perfect. Or if you don't want to duplicate things, because it's not a good strategy, I believe, you can simply get rid of the from. That's an alternative. And that will work, because the width will be 100 pixels by default, unless something happens, right? So now if we try again, look, 100 pixels, no problem, and after 3 seconds, it goes to 200. Does it make sense? Yeah? So yeah, again, many developers struggle with that, but you can see it's not that complicated. Can we animate multiple things? For instance, can we increase the size of the text at the time we expand the size of the box? Correct. In here, you see, we can add as many properties as we want, right? So we can do font size 40 pixels. Why not? Because the default font size is 20, you will see that the bigger the box is, the bigger the text is. Look, after 3 seconds, 1, 2, 3, ooh. Yeah? Any questions? No questions means everyone will be able to run the new intermediate animations training scoring 95 plus.
I got a question.
Go for it.
So at the moment, I think you were using keyframes to and from.
Yeah,
So is that what we just have at start and beginning, and then we use the percentages when we got the past and middle?
that's correct. That's correct. So Patrick says something very interesting. Using from and to is the easiest way to handle animations because you set the boundaries. It's like a transition, right? You specify the boundaries and then the browser will interpolate in between. But we can have full control on the animation. We can do that. Why this is so sexy? Because then, of course, as you can imagine, we can have something very complex, right? So we can decide the behavior of our box on its keyframe, right? So let's see what happens. That will be something a bit weird probably, but yeah, whatever. Yeah, and of course we can even change the color, right? So 50% background color red. So that will hopefully change the color at some point. You see? Oh, yeah, that's cool, right? Again, 1, 2, 3. So of course you can have full control on the way the animations work. Yeah. Anything else? No? Cool. So that was it from me, guys. Thank you.